Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to our 2024 Virtual Summer School Series, Program Development Through the Lens of Access and Belonging. My name again is Emily Smith. I'm a Program Associate in the Community Professional Economic Development Unit at the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture and Research. Today's session is entitled Engaging Communities and Advisory Councils in Extension Program Planning and Development. I'm really excited about our session today. Before we dive in, I just wanted to remind everyone about the Zoom Q&A feature that we're going to be utilizing throughout this session today. If you have questions, please, for the presenters, you can post those in the Q&A box throughout the session, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. We also have two co-facilitators today joining us, and I just wanted to thank Tia Gregory, Mississippi State University, and Cheryl Newberry of Oklahoma State University. And now I'm excited to read you all a summary of today's session. As you all might know, Extension aims to translate research into actionable knowledge to improve the lives and livelihood of clients and communities. The first step in this knowledge translation and program development process is to identify and prioritize community needs. University of Kentucky Extension recently conducted a statewide community needs assessment to understand priority areas for extension programming and outreach. More than 36,000 Kentuckians representing all 120 counties of the Commonwealth responded to the needs assessment survey. Drawing on lessons learned from the needs assessment process, this presentation will discuss best practices for soliciting and amplifying the voice of communities in the program development and planning process. The presentation will also discuss effective strategies for engaging advisory councils in the needs assessment process and their roles in the utilization of assessment results to inform programming outreach. We've got a really exciting session, and now I want to share a little bit more about our speakers today. Dr. Lola Adu-Dokum is an Assistant Extension Professor of Program Evaluation in the Department of Community and Leadership Development. She leads statewide extension program evaluation efforts and provides technical guidance, trainings, and resources to build and sustain the capacity of University of Kentucky Extension specialists and agents to identify, measure, and report robust outcomes and impact of their programs. Her areas of expertise include evaluation capacity building, program development and evaluation, implementation science, and the practical applications of rigorous quantitative and qualitative research designs and advanced statistical methods to extension program evaluation. We're so happy to have Dr. Lola Adu-Dokum here today. Joining her is Kim Hyken. She first joined the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension in 1995 as Extension Associate and served in the capacity for 11 years. From 2006 to 2021, Hinken actually, that's pronounced Hinken, held communications and leadership roles in the School of Human Environmental Sciences and Family and Consumer Sciences for Extension. She currently serves as Director for Extension Engagement and Administrative Initiatives for the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension. In this role, she supports the overall extension program in addition to growing strategic partnerships both on and off campus, with a focus on partnerships and engagement, board and council training and development, and also the administrative initiatives. I am delighted to turn this over now to our amazing and esteemed speakers. Please enjoy this presentation.
Thank you so much, Emily, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am pulling up my slide, and you can give me a thumbs up if you see my presentation slide. Thank you so much. So, like Emily said in her introduction, my name is Lola, and I will be joined by my colleague Kim Henken this afternoon to talk to you about how we engage communities and advisory councils in our program planning and development here in Kentucky. So we will discuss the needs assessment process. I'm going to start the presentation by discussing and describing the Kentucky Extension Community Needs Assessment process, we'll focus more on the strategies and less on the findings. And then my colleague Kim will take she will take it over from me and talk about the importance and opportunities for engaging advisory councils. Within our presentations, both of us will draw out the lessons learned and share with you the things that worked and what we think we could have improved upon. We want to start by learning a little bit about how your organizations engage with communities and advisory councils for program planning and development. Please use the chat to share your organizational practices with us. The question is, how does your organization create or promote a sense of belonging for clients and advisory councils in program development and planning? We'll take about just 1 minute to see what you share in the chat. Okay, thank you, Timothy. You wrote that your organization treats each person as unique and valuable. Thank you, Jenny. You use focus group. I see a few focus group methods and surveys coming up. Okay, so these are sounding pretty similar to what we do here in Kentucky. I see a culturally responsive methodology going on there. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions, for your responses. And we will, if time allows, we may touch back on some of those things that you have mentioned. Okay, so we all know that in Extension, what we do is to take university research that has been proven and use that to improve our communities, the communities that we serve, not just individuals, but the communities as a collective. And typically in Extension, we tend to do that in one of two ways, following one or two models. The first model is what we are all probably very familiar with, the program development model, where we start by identifying needs, we design and deliver programs to address those needs, and of course, we evaluate. In some cases, especially for our colleagues in agriculture and natural resources, it is more of a reactive model where we are receiving requests from clients, providing services, and of course, evaluating if the services we provided solved their questions. Regardless of the method or model that we adopt in our extension outreach and programming, needs assessment, issue identification, or even need prioritization, we have different words or terms for explaining that process of identifying what our communities need and making sure that we are responding in ways that address their needs and improve their livelihoods. Here in Kentucky, we use the process of needs assessment to identify and prioritize needs. We've done statewide needs assessment twice now in Kentucky. We've always done needs assessments, but the first time that the needs assessment was statewide was in 2019. At that time, we used a needs assessment survey, secondary data sources, and focus groups and listening sessions to gain the perspectives of our stakeholders. And that process was also a core element of our plan of work process to understand what the state was going to be focusing on one aspect. And then the other aspect was at the local level where our extension agents worked with their program councils and other stakeholders to use the same data to plan for programming to meet the needs within their counties. In 2019, that process was very elaborate. And we summarized the data, we identified what the needs were across the state, but then COVID came. So because of COVID, we couldn't really, like all extension systems, even though we kept delivering our programming, we were a little bit limited in assessing to what extent we were able to address those needs. So in 2023, we repeated the needs assessment again. This time around, we did not conduct focus groups or listening sessions across the communities because the goal, the overarching goal this time around was to just see where we are with things. And we weren't surprised when the results came out, actually, because a lot of the issues we identified in 2019 remained in 2023. So for 2023, our goals were: one, we wanted to provide data regarding the issues in our communities that we serve at the local county levels, and of course, to provide a state level overview of what Extension can do to improve the lives and livelihoods of Kentuckians. So in addition to having data-driven programs, we also wanted to make sure that we were connecting Extension resources to local issues. And of course, we, like other extension systems, we have partnerships and collaborations across the state, and we wanted to have the data to guide us in working with our partners and collaborators to solve problems within Kentucky. Like I said earlier, we for this presentation, we are not focusing so much on the results. I would talk a little bit about it, but we are going to be talking about the process and the activities and the strategies that we employed to be able to have 36,000 plus Kentuckians respond to our survey. So I'm going to talk briefly about all the entities that took place that took part in survey development, marketing and recruitment for the survey, and the collection and management of data, and of course, the entities that are currently working to promote data use and dissemination. One of the factors that really led to the successful implementation of the needs assessment, I believe, is the collaborative nature of the process itself. So we have a program and staff development unit here in Lexington, but in Kentucky, but it's a little bit different than in most extension systems, because ours is not a physical unit, so to say. We are more of a work unit where different people perform program and staff development roles. So I work in evaluation, and as a member of that team, I provided overall coordination for the process. But a lot of the real work was done by people who are, who at that time served as area or regional directors or program leaders. And they helped with identifying survey items. So we didn't start from the scratch. We still used our 2019 survey, but we had to improve it. I will talk a little bit more about that later, to be able to address the concerns that our personnel and clients raised in 2019. So we, in Kentucky, like most of your states, I can imagine, we have regional extension directors who are supervisors for area extension directors. So our region consists of multiple areas, and our areas consist of multiple counties. And the area directors have almost direct supervision for agents, for our county agents. So they played significant role in communicating expectations with our agents. And of course, our program leaders are administrative heads for extension program areas. And so they also played important roles in helping us to achieve the activities that I have listed here. I'm not going to go through each group because I'll talk about them in subsequent slides, but you will notice that I have advisory councils and Kentuckians in bold, because even if we collaborated, even if we did all that we needed to do and we were not successful at reaching the people, the needs assessment would not be counted as success, because the data came from Kentuckians. So a lot of the success or credit for the success of the needs assessment actually should go to Kentuckians who were willing to respond to the survey, and of course to our advisory councils that did a great job of connecting with the communities, and of course did a great job of helping us to see how what happens in the communities relate to the data that we were hoping to collect and the data that we finally collected. My colleague Kim will talk more about the role of the advisory councils in the entire process. In terms of survey development for the 2023 needs assessment, like I said earlier, we didn't start from the scratch. We revamped the existing survey from 2019. There were three major complaints. One, the survey was long. It had a lot of irrelevant items that people didn't think were representative of what extension does. And then a lot of the items were, not from extension perspective, so to say. So moving in 2023, we then went through an iterative and collaborative process that ensured that program leaders and specialists had a say in the items that were finally selected for the survey. Administrators also reviewed and offered feedback. And most importantly, our advisory council, also the State Advisory Council, pilot tested and provided suggestions for improvement. And Kim will tell you a lot about that later. So the final survey that we sent to our clients and Kentuckians consisted of 4 domains. Of course, we asked about demographic characteristics like age, race, gender, education, income, and employment. And then we wanted to know how familiar people were with extension, especially post-COVID. So we asked 2 questions, one about how familiar are you with extension, and another question asking if the respondent or somebody in their family had participated in an extension program in the past year. And we included an open-ended question that has surprisingly given us a lot of good information about other needs within communities that our survey did not cover. In terms of the core of the survey, we had 4 focus areas that align with our major programs. We had 12 questions for each of those scales. One scale addressed agricultural and natural resource needs. The second one focused on youth development. The third one focused on individual and family development. And then the final scale focused on community and economic development. So we simply asked, to what extent do you think practical education in this area is needed in your community? And we listed 12 items for each of the focus areas. And the response categories were no need, low need, moderate need, high need, very high need, or not sure. In the previous assessment, it was more elaborate than that. And people said just a simple survey would work better. So we listened to what the personnel and respondents complained about at that time. So the final survey, we used Qualtrics primarily, but we also offered paper versions of the survey. I said versions because we had it in both English and Spanish. And the survey targeted Kentucky residents who, at the time of data collection, were at least 18 years old. It was a very brief survey. We really wanted brevity. We wanted people to go through the survey, give us meaningful data. We preferred that to having long surveys that people didn't complete. So we wanted a short survey that people will complete and give us good data. I will share the top items later, but the questions that we've been asked most have focused on recruitment and marketing strategies. How were you able to work with the different layers of extension to achieve a response size of 36,000. So one of the things that we did in terms of recruitment was to give each county a recruitment target. That target was based on both a statistical model and also a qualitative consideration of county context. In terms of the statistical model, we looked at the county population, the number of respondents to the 2019 survey, and the number of Extension County agents, because Extension County agents were primarily responsible for recruiting participants. So we didn't want to give a high number to a high target to a county that had maybe one extension agent. And because they are our boots on ground, even though other personnel also helped in recruitment. In addition to the quantitative element, we then worked with area directors and regional directors to look at the quantitative outputs of the model and then put those numbers within the context of the county. Is this achievable in this county? Can this county realistically recruit 750 people? So we relied on their wisdom to adjust those numbers to reflect the county context. And then we organized and implemented agent training and implementations and information sessions and several updates and Q&A sessions at program area meetings. And then we provided a detailed agent information sheet with all possible questions that agents could have, and then answers to those questions. And every material all the materials were housed on a dedicated website where agents could just log into and access all of the marketing materials, the surveys, and everything that we provided through our AdCom to aid in the process of recruitment and marketing for the survey. Our marketing efforts I can say that we had two layers of marketing efforts. One layer was at the central level, at the state level. So our AdCom worked on postcards for county use, but also provided postcards that could be used at the state level. We had extension level and college level social media posts, different news releases and college level newsletters, and of course, recruitment at state events and meetings, including our state fair. Our data collection began around our state fair, so that was a good opportunity to promote the survey. I think, if I remember very well, we had lots of freestanding postcards with QR codes that were placed in strategic locations, including the state fair at the time. In terms of county level recruitment efforts, each county received recruitment materials that were specific to them in both English and Spanish. We had a editable letter that they could write to the community partners and use that to promote the survey. They were provided with digital and print flyers, social media, digital media toolkits, extension newsletters, and different news releases that our AdCom provided to market the assessment. I want to give a few examples of what counties did at the local level. We offered them flexibility to incentivize. So there were counties with enough money for raffles and prizes, and they were free to do that. Again, we encouraged them to recruit at both extension and non-extension events. And then a lot of the counties were pretty creative in engaging with their local partners. The two examples I have here, there was one county that worked with a local middle school to recruit parents. So they did send postcards to parents through the school. Another county has currently a huge population, more than usual population of ethnic minorities, specifically Hispanics, and they have ethnic grocery stores. So they worked with the grocery store owner to put the postcards in plastic bags that they used to bag groceries. So that reached that population. So counties we were very flexible with counties in terms of what and how they could recruit. In terms of data collection and management, data collection began in August and ended in December. We wanted to give enough time to hear multiple voices and to give people the opportunity to learn about the assessment and also respond. So we kept that from August 1 until December 31. We at the central office took care of transportation, collation, and entry of data because we didn't want to burden our agents with that. We wanted them to focus specifically on recruitment, and then the central office dealt with managing the data. We also provided periodic recruitment reports that will show what percentage of the target each county had achieved. And that was really helpful in helping, in motivating and gingering counties to work towards their goals for recruitment. Briefly, in terms of respondents, like I said earlier, we had a little bit over 36,000 respondents. 2/3 of our respondents provided their responses by Qualtrics, but we had more than 11,000 paper surveys that we managed at the state office here. Our respondents included 73% female, That's not unusual for extension, and mostly Caucasian. We wish we had more other underrepresented groups. I'll talk about that in lessons learned, but it's a reflection of Kentucky to an extent, even though we could have done a lot better. And then where we really did well was in reaching out to people who had not participated in extension, either for themselves or somebody in their family. So 74% of our respondents were fairly new to extension in terms of participation. And if you can see between our somewhat familiar and not familiar, it was almost 72%. So we thought we reached we reached audiences that were beyond our traditional extension groups. Just a little bit about the top 7 priorities: substance use, minimizing youth substance use, promoting youth life skills, promoting youth workforce readiness, access to affordable, nutritious food. And again, a lot of these were the same or are the same as what we found in 2019. The only difference with regards to the substance use items is that in 2023, the items were specific to youth, but in 2019, they were more general in terms of, we want education and programming to help reduce substance use in general. So right now, we have a public-facing dashboard where we are disseminating the results. You will see a link to that in the chat. I'm not going to visit the dashboard because of our time. Again, we are focusing on process and not on the data. But if you go to our dashboard, you can see what the results are. And we do have filters that we use for audience segmentation to help us see how different demographic groups responded to the survey. So the link will be in the chat. I will just return to the presentation. So in addition to the public-facing dashboard that, of course, was pilot tested again by different groups, we organized in-service training sessions for agents and specialists on how to access and use the dashboard for program planning. And we also provided a PDF of abridged assessment findings, secondary data in the form of county profiles that a faculty in my department, Dr. Julie Zimmerman, actually helped to produce those. And then we summarized the responses to the open-ended question and had county-specific reports. So agents and external entities can access all of those reports from the dashboard. So in terms of how we plan to use the data and how we have continued to use the data or the findings of the assessment, we are using the assessment to promote data-driven state and county level plans of work, of course, to identify and prioritize our community needs, and to guide our specialists in developing resources for agents. So here in Kentucky, which may be similar to what happens in other states, we have the state specialists who look at trends and use the trends in research and in practice to understand what may be happening in Kentucky and use that in conjunction with our needs assessment, to develop tools, different types of education materials that our agents can then implement at the county level. So our specialists are currently working to use the information in addition to trend data that they already have to develop resources for agents. We're also using the assessment data to support grant proposals and, of course, to guide us in partnerships and collaborations to identify where we need to strengthen our partnerships. And even when partners come to us, to help them identify what the needs are in extension and how they can come to play a role in addressing those needs. So I want to talk briefly about the best practices, what we think worked for us, and then I will talk about what we could have done better. In terms of what worked, I believe that having buy-in from extension personnel at all levels and administrators. I'm not saying that everybody bought into it, but we had majority of extension personnel and administrators who believed in the vision and were committed to participating and committed to making sure that the process was a success. That really helped. And then having AgCom provide that central marketing, that central provision of marketing materials while offering communities a lot of flexibility in how they use the materials. I think that was very useful. And of course, focusing the recruitment at the local level, having county-specific marketing and making sure that we were consistent in communicating with our counties and everybody involved in the process, from program leaders to regional directors and area directors, making sure that we were all sending across the same language, the same message, was something that really contributed to the success. And of course, all the efforts to inform agents and to provide training and resources to help them in recruitment was also, that was a factor that was very useful. And finally, I think just the emphasis on data use, helping everyone to understand that it wasn't just an exercise in futility. It was an exercise that would generate data that we were going to be using for our plan of work process, which we have started. And so that gave people a reason to participate. And for agents, some of the agents I spoke with, that helped them to put in more effort into recruiting people that will represent the needs in their counties, because at the end of the day, the data, the findings will inform the plan of work that they will develop for their own county. In terms of where we could have done better, even though we had a survey running for almost 4 to 5 months, I think, if we had extended, we may have been able to get additional data from the larger counties. And we didn't do too well with recruitment of underrepresented audiences, despite the provision of our materials in Spanish, for example. We still had low participation rates. So that we could have engaged more with groups and organizations working directly with underrepresented audiences to really make sure that we have their perspectives and their voices in the needs assessment data. This year, for this round, for the 2023 needs assessment, like I said, we didn't do focus groups and listening sessions like we did in 2019. There's that possibility that we could, probably gotten additional useful data by just listening to people and asking questions in a more discussion format. And of course, project staffing is something we'll probably do differently in terms of the external experts that we worked with. We've had reconsiderations for what could be done better in the next round. So this wraps up my session. And while we transition to Kim to talk specifically about the needs the role of the advisory council in the needs assessment, we want you to complete this survey. So while this poll, while you are working on that, please join me in welcoming Kim Enken to talk about advisory councils.
Welcome, everyone. And I know there's a lot of questions that are showing up in the Q&A, and we do have some time that we'll spend at the end where we can focus in on those. I've answered just a few as they popped up. Some of the more technical ones about the assessment and how it proceeded, I'll defer to Dr. Adedokan to answer those because she'll be the better expert for those answers. But do keep using the Q&A to share your questions. And I know there's a poll on screen for you all right now, so if you'll take a second to respond, we'll use that as part of our transition. All right, it's interesting to see, and as you all see in the results now, that really the different methodologies are used in pretty similar rates, ranging from 40 to just above 50%. We have utilized all of these strategies, and even though the formal community assessment survey was a big push this year, and our work that I'm going to talk about through our structured advisory councils will be a big push this year, there will be some pieces where a focus group type approach or conversations with key stakeholders or collaborators locally will happen as part of our plan of work as well. So Lola, if you'd like to move us forward, we'll get started talking about our advisory council structure. And as you all shared, 40% of you all do use structured advisory councils as part of your program planning process. In Kentucky, we have a very robust advisory council structure that continues to be very important for us as a way to stay connected with local grassroots leadership and as a way to foster leadership development within our extension clientele and volunteer base. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about our council structure. So in Kentucky, we do have two land-grant universities. The University of Kentucky is what's often in our system referred to as an 1862 land-grant, and then Kentucky State University is what's often referred to as an 1890 land-grant. We have a long track record of collaboration to deliver extension programs statewide, and we have one advisory council system for Kentucky Extension holistically that's representative of both the University of Kentucky and Kentucky State University. And as you see on screen, this diagram, if you look from the bottom up, it all really begins with those county level program advisory councils. They're kind of the base of our structure, and they connect in with overall county extension councils, as well as any applicable state level program councils. And then our county councils are bridged to the state level through area delegates. Each of those area delegates represent a 4 to 6 county geographic area. And we're going to go through a series of slides, and I'll talk a little bit more about each of these components of our advisory council system and how we utilize them. So next slide, Lola. So the program advisory councils really are that base. So at the county level, each agent, or if it's a county that has multiple agents in the same program areas. So for instance, a county that has 3 4-H agents. Each agent or group of agents within a program area is charged with utilizing a program-specific advisory council. And those advisory councils really perform a wide variety of functions for us. They assist in our program planning and implementation. The program advisory councils often are helping us with acquire and manage resources. Most of you all are familiar within 4-H that fundraising is not uncommon, and often our 4-H program councils are actively involved in fundraising to support some of the local programming. Those program advisory councils play a key role for us in recruiting and training volunteers. They are critical in our feedback and evaluation loops, and they also aid us in communicating our results to stakeholders. When your leaders can speak on your behalf, it's a powerful message beyond what you can share internally or through your own personnel. So Lola, next slide. Our county extension councils in Kentucky are actually defined by legislation. They include representation from all program councils or program areas, as well as others from the community. The community members that are part of our councils may be from specific entities or organizations. It's not uncommon for us to have someone from the school system or from the local public library or the health department, or those collaborators that you often see at the county level as members of our county extension council. Our county extension council is really asked to think holistically about the overall county extension program. And though many of those members will represent a specific program council, we really want them to think about how all the pieces fit together and how the needs and issues may touch upon more than one program area and be something that can be addressed holistically. So again, those county extension councils, they're key components of that local needs assessment process. And I'll talk about how they were engaged with our survey. They aid us in program design and implementation locally, working alongside the extension agents and staff. Word of mouth is still a huge opportunity to market extensions programs across Kentucky, and our extension council members are a part of that loop and helping spread the word about extensions efforts locally. And then that resource piece is important as well. We have great county level support in Kentucky, and our county extension councils have played a key role over the years in sustaining that strong local support for extension. Next slide, Lola. And then that top level that was on the diagram I showed you was our State Extension Advisory Council. Our State Extension Advisory Council is asked to provide programmatic feedback and input at the state level. In addition to those delegates I mentioned earlier that represent our 24 administrative areas and are geographic based, that council also includes delegates appointed through the extension directors and the extension program leaders at both University of Kentucky and Kentucky State University. And our state level council is led by a team of 3 officers who come from the membership of the council and serve a 3-year term. And again, they're representing that volunteer base across our state. They're providing that stakeholder review of our programming, and they're really ambassadors for us in many ways. That could be in taking messages back to our county extension councils, in aiding with training local leaders, and in just advocating and being spokespersons for extension. Next slide, Lola. That Dr. Adedokan mentioned to us that our councils were involved throughout the community needs assessment process. And several members of our state level council served as the pilot testers of the survey instrument and provided feedback that was then incorporated into that survey instrument to enhance that tool and make it an effective survey for us. Our state council members, we challenged each of them to, at minimum, contact 10 people and provide them with the information about the community assessment and help in getting responses to the community assessment. But we didn't stop in just asking those state council members to do that individually. We also asked them to go back and challenge their county council members to do the same, so that we hopefully got a ripple effect of response recruitment throughout our advisory council system. Next slide. Now we get to the part where that feedback and input that has come through the community assessment will be part of our plan of work development process. We are currently in that process of designing and developing the new 5-year plan of work for Kentucky Extension and for our counties. And that process will take place over the next 8 to 10 months. Our plan of work process emphasizes that importance of grassroots input, that focus on local priority issues, that we set goals and define anticipated outcomes, and then we align our plans to those outcomes and key indicators to measure them. And the planning process also asks that our counties define strategies to measure their impact, because we know the importance of accountability throughout the process. Next slide. As the process moves forward, those county level program councils and county extension councils, they're going to be key in the issues identification and prioritization process. They will review the needs assessment data and other secondary data that's important to consider as well. And then they will be part of a needs discussion process locally that will lead to the identification of key local priorities or areas of focus for our next plan of work. So each county will define their key areas of focus for the next 5-year plan of work, and they'll utilize that council system as part of that prioritization process. We'll also depend upon our councils as those plans, once those plans are developed, to aid us in implementation. And then annually, we ask that they kind of review where they are in their plan of work with their councils, get feedback and suggestions and ideas for next steps in that plan of work. But we also want them to be talking about what issues may have emerged that aren't reflected in that 5-year plan of work. And do those connect with the plan of work, or are they just a key local need that has emerged that can also be addressed through extension? So As I said, we're in this phase of plan of work development. The next 8 to 10 months, that data review will be the next step at the county level. For counties, as Dr. Adedokan mentioned, some had varying levels of response across different demographics. So if they see an area where maybe that community voice wasn't what it should have been, they're going to be encouraged to seek additional input so that they can make sure that that voice is reflective of the community holistically. Those councils would be part of that prioritization process and then the overall planning. Next. So what have we learned and what do we encourage as best practices for engaging advisory councils? And several of the comments that you all shared as response to the icebreaker at the beginning of the session today, either repeat or connect with the bullet points I'm going to share as those kind of key best practices to keep in mind with advisory councils. Inclusive membership is very important, and that inclusivity really should touch on a variety of things. It should touch on all program areas, the geographic areas of the county. Our counties in Kentucky all have a county seat or a larger community within, but then a lot of different small communities spread without that geographic county. So we want to be representative of the county holistically, geographically. We encourage for those councils to be reflective of the racial and ethnic diversity of the county population. Intergenerational involvement is important, as is the importance of having key collaborators and community partners represented. Meetings should truly have a purpose and not just be held to check a box. We challenge our county staff to work collaboratively with our council chairs or presidents in agenda planning so that they can make sure that agenda is reflective of the leadership's interests as well. Tailored communications we have found to be very important because when you get into a group that is a generational blend or mix, especially if it spans across 3 or 4 generations, how they best communicate is going to vary. So we often encourage our agents to determine 2 methods of communication to use with their program advisory councils or county extension councils, and to use those 2 different forms of communication consistently. That redundancy can just aid in participation and engagement. And then structure meetings to include dialogue. Talk with the advisory council, not just to them. Next slide. So I know there are questions in the Q&A. Dr. Adedokan, do you want to address any of those verbally?
Oh, sorry, got to unmute myself. Yeah, so I was following, I couldn't type as you were talking, so I haven't addressed any of the questions. So I will address some of those verbally. I'm going to start with a question saying, yes, so responses were shared by county on our website. On the dashboard, you will select your county that you want to learn about, and you can see all the results for the county, and the results can be printable. But also we provided each county with a PDF summary of findings. So the filters that we have for audience segmentation allows you to select not only your county, you can select multiple counties and see the results for those counties. Somebody would like to see the 12 items, you can reach out. You can reach out to me for that. There are questions about advisory board for you, Kim, but let me look at Roshan asked about learning about the marketing and recruitment. Yes, we can provide you details for what we shared today. In with regards to addressing duplicates, we have a Qualtrics guru on staff who really worked to set a lot of the algorithms and things to prevent bots. I will need to check with him to see what percentage we got at the end, but I can tell you it was pretty low. In terms of duplicate responses, we set the survey so that if you are sending a response and you don't complete your survey, it turns off after a certain time. And I think that was a very conservative time. I would need to go back and check the exact time limit we placed on that. But that doesn't stop, it doesn't completely, address the issue of somebody doing both a paper and a Qualtrics version. So that could have happened. But we did foresee that there would be incomplete responses. So we turned off those incomplete responses after a certain time. We did not buy any panel data for the Qualtrics. We did not buy panelists from Qualtrics. It was basically our agents doing the boot work for us. Can you clarify whether you asked for the committee data? So we asked them in the scales, to what extent does your community need education related to, and then we listed those 12 items for each program area. And then we also included an open-ended question that said, what other needs, what are the other areas of need in your community beyond what the survey has asked? And that gave us very useful information. For example, access to childcare was not on our survey. It was predominant in the open-ended question. Homelessness, programming for homelessness was one that really emerged in the open-ended question that was not included in our survey. So that was why when I talked about what we learned, I talked about sufficiency of the survey and whether or not we could have gained more if we had conducted listening sessions and focus groups like we did in 2019. Kim, do you want to answer a few of the advisory team questions? Then I'll come back to the... Oh, okay, Kim is already answering some of those advisory team questions. Kim, do you want to say anything about those questions, or do you want me to go ahead?
I'll just share. I've been trying to catch up with answering in the Q&A. So you may see answers if you put questions specifically about councils. You may see those pop up in the text Q&A. There was an ask about, there was one of those questions was about how it compares to the elected county supervisors. And I think that could just be differences in state terminologies and state structure. I talked specifically about our advisory councils today, but we also have local county extension district boards, which are appointed positions, and they're the ones who oversee our local taxing districts. So their function is much more the business of the local extension office and that budget and how that tax district works. The advisory councils, they give input to that district board, and they have some formal responsibilities related to that district board. They are also automatically, those district board members are automatically members of that county council, so that they have a seat at the table to provide programmatic input as well.
Thank you, Kim. Let me address this question about bots. I think I addressed it earlier, that we had somebody on the technical side who helped to address that. I don't know what percentage we got at the end of the day, but it was pretty low. And then with regards to the dashboard presents primarily the survey data, but it also has links to websites displaying the secondary data, county profiles, as well as a summary of comments for each county. So for the dashboard, we focused a lot on simplicity because we want our agents and county stakeholders to be able to go to the website and pull the data they want in a simple format and understand it. But, we also provided access to the county profiles on a website, as well as access to the summaries of responses to the open-ended questions. And then there's this question about demographic data. Actually, we did process some of the demographic data, primarily the data we got from Qualtrics. So remember, we got about 11,700 plus from paper-based surveys. Those we couldn't process until I think we finished processing those in February. But during the data collection time, we would periodically take a look at what we were getting from Qualtrics to see how we were doing with different demographic groups. And I believe I've answered the question about the survey that about the dashboard, that the dashboard includes links to other forms of data. Yes, so that, thank you, Scarlett. That was what our tech person did. Yes.
Well, I just want to pop in and thank both of you so much for sharing your experience, your process, your expertise. Thank you to the facilitators today as well, and thank you to all of you who participated in this first session of our 2024 Virtual Summer School Series. I want to give a special shout out to Chris Mukes, Melissa Johnson, Andrea Price, and Samantha Barker, who are helping kind of with our tech and marketing. Thank you so much. If you would like to contact today's presenters, we will share their contact information in the chat and also follow up via however email or however folks would like to receive that information.